All right, guys. So, welcome back to our part 2 of our How to Trade Volume Profile series. Make sure if you guys haven't seen part 1, if you guys are watching this live, obviously stay here. But if you guys are watching this on the VOD, go back and watch part 1 before watching this video. And then also, if you guys haven't already seen the How to Trade Volume Profile video, the one that has about 100,000 views on my channel, that's the one I'm talking about. Make sure to watch that one first as well. If you guys are here for the live session, you guys can hang out. We're basically going to do exactly what we did in part 1, just giving you guys some more live examples, giving you guys kind of a walkthrough of how you can use my volume profile teachings in those videos in an actual live case. Okay, so we're going to do exactly what we did yesterday. I'm going to go over some examples of what I showed throughout the day on SPY and Qs, and then we're going to do some live analysis as well. So let's get started with that. I'm going to grab some images here. We're going to look at how SPY kind of played out today. All right, here we go. This is the start. So this would be SPY's initial balance. So this is the first hour of the day, taking it from 9:30 to 10:30. We're going to grab the volume profile, and then we're going to grab the value area low, the value area high, and then the POC. So all three of these levels were pretty neutral. We had a little bit of price below the value area low right after it formed, but overall it was slightly neutral, kind of bearish. I said in Discord that if it wanted to be bullish, it had to reclaim around 439.50, and that would have been your bullish trigger to kind of push back into the gap around 441. So any price action that stayed below 438.70 would have been bearish. Okay, so let's look at what happened after that. Then we had the profile come in. This was about at 11 o'clock. It was pretty much perfectly balanced. So it's a D-shaped volume profile where the POC is towards the middle, and then you have volume falling off towards the highs and volume falling off towards the lows. Now, typically, during these balanced profile days, you are safe to buy the lows and safe to sell the highs. So you can basically just scalp this as if it was a normal range. Now, what I said in Discord was it's perfectly balanced. Normally, you would buy the lows and sell the highs. But with Qs being so weak, I would be careful buying the lows here. So let me show you what Qs looked like around this same time. So this is the S&P 500 for you guys that don't trade equities. This is the Nasdaq. So the Nasdaq is kind of the one that's heavily favored on tech. But this is clearly extremely bearish compared to kind of what SPY looks like. So the profile here was more bearish. Let me see if I have an image of the profile. Here it is here. So the profile here you can see is extremely bearish. It's pretty much just going straight down. It's not really finding a whole lot of support, and then it's just continuing to find value lower. Okay, so let's go back to this image for a second here. So these three lines here would be the Q's initial balance. So we have the initial balance low, the POC, and the initial balance high. So this is clearly bearish because basically right after we put in that low, we started breaking below it. Okay, and like I told you guys yesterday, to give you guys some targets, if it's outside the profile, you can use Fibonacci. Okay, so the Fibonacci targets would be taking the high of the day there, down to the low of the day, which was there when I made the Fibonacci. And then this would be like your trigger, the pink line here, the 0.13 fib. Once you break that, your targets are the 0.5, 0.618 extensions, and then the 100% to 113% extensions. That's your secondary targets. And then your final target would be the 1618. Okay? So let's move on here. So the next thing that I called out today was the support node that was forming on Qs. So we had that nasty downtrend forming here where you weren't really finding a whole lot of support and you're breaking lower. Then you started to find a little bit of support here, and it created this node. And I said in Discord, let's see, I said you're losing the support node. So this is putting in a support node, and then you're losing it. So this is kind of like bearish continuation. So we have a bearish downtrend here, and it kind of did the same thing here. It put in a node, and then you lost the node. So same thing here. Put in a node, lost the node. So as long as it keeps doing that, you're just going to keep hitting your fib targets. Okay? Let me grab the next one. The next image here was the POC shifting. So actually, let me re-grab that old one. So notice the POC is this yellow line here. The POC is towards the top of the day. So even though we're very bearish, the POC is still up here because you're not getting a whole lot of volume down here to shift the POC. So when it does this, it shifts the POC. This is pretty bearish because this is telling you that you have actually found a lot of value on these lower levels. Okay, so originally most of our value was towards the highs, but now most of our value is actually towards the lows. So this is very bearish. Now right after it shifted the POC, it tried to reclaim the POC here. You can see the green candle came in and you tried to break that support node. So funny enough, you see how I marked out the support node? This was the node that was starting to form before we broke down. This node is actually exactly what created the POC. So that node got filled in with some more volume, and that actually shifted the POC down. Okay? So let me move on here. Another thing that I talked about in Discord, let me see if I can grab the other image. So here is SPY. I know it's a little confusing. I'm going back from SPY and Qs, but there's a lot of good examples today. So I want to cover as many as I can. So SPY here, going back to what I said earlier, this was the perfectly balanced volume profile, right? And I said in Discord that typically you would buy the lows and sell the highs, but because Qs is so weak, you want to be careful. Now in voice chat, I said if Q starts to bounce, then the SPY balance profile will start to play out, okay? So then Q started to bounce, and that's exactly what happened there. SPY started to actually play out its balanced day. So on a balanced day, when it comes outside the value area low, this is kind of like a buying opportunity down here. So then it gave you that nice buying opportunity, and you actually pushed higher. Going back to another thing that we talked about yesterday was the single prints, right? So look at the single prints there. That shows you that there's pretty strong support there. You came down to test that level, and it bounced right off of it without filling it in at all. Okay? So that's very bullish. Let me go back to Qs here. Actually, let's stay on SPY for a second. So going back to SPY, you see how it's bouncing off that that value area low, kind of that buying opportunity I was just talking about? Look at where we fail. We fail right on the POC. So like I said in my other videos, when you are in a balanced day and you're selling the highs or you're buying the lows, your targets are very set in stone. If you're buying the lows, your targets are the POC and the value area high. If you're selling the highs, your targets are the POC and the value area low. Okay, those are always your targets, right? So if you bought the low here on this single print, you would have been targeting POC and then targeting the value area high. You did not get the value area high. You only got POC. So you got the POC. You should have taken profit there on at least like half your trade, and then you started to nuke off of that. So once it started to come back down, back below the value area low, as soon as it shows weakness, you want to cut the trade, okay? Because you're just scalping the small move there. Very easily, a balanced profile can turn into an imbalanced profile, right? So the balance here is not going to stay forever. So if this wants to start selling off, you're going to start to see a bearish imbalance, all right? So if it starts to pump and you're in profit, but then you fail one of your major targets, as soon as you see weakness, you want to get out of that trade, okay? Okay, so let's move on with Qs. So Qs, we had the POC shift down, right? You tried to recover the POC, but then look at what happened. You failed the POC, you started trading below that support node, and then you hit our first target. So there's our first bearish target. Let's move on again. Here is our second bearish target being hit. And then you can see my remaining bearish targets down here. The 100%, the 113, and the 1618. So until you reclaim this POC, this is weak, right? Even if it bounces, this is still weak, and you still want to be targeting these lower levels. All right? Let's keep moving on. I'll try to stick with Qs until we're done, and then I'll move on to SPY, so I don't keep going back and forth. Here is the next update on Qs. So we had our targets being hit right around 362.50. And then look at where these targets are now. So the targets are here. We try to fail below them, but then it starts to form this nice little support node here. And then we have some single prints below that. So we tried to push below these targets. It actually acted as a single print support, and then it pushed us up. So now once we pushed back above that node, this node becomes support. All right? Let's move on and see how it reacts. One more thing that I call out here. Let's get rid of some of these older images. One more thing that I call out here is this gap. So we start to form that support node. And then there's a clear gap right here. There's also a clear gap up here. But I'm only paying attention to this one because it's very relative to price. It's very close. And I said in Discord that it's creating a gap. This could be a target or a rejection zone. So if you were like buying the support here, you could target that gap. Or if you were looking for a continuation to sell, then you would be selling that that gap. Okay, but look at what happens. It doesn't even get to the gap, and then it starts to sell off. This is really bearish. Okay, and you can see it starts to form a pretty strong node here. So if we go back. This was already creating this node, but it gets stronger. You see how it gets bigger here? And it's nearly creating the POC. So the POC, for you guys that don't know, it's the highest node on the entire profile. This is very close to being the POC. So if this traded there for a little bit longer, this would shift the POC down again, and that would be extremely bearish. Okay. So that gap did not get tested, and we actually started to sell off below that support node. So this is very bearish yet again. Okay. So let's move on. Here's another update. It tried to recover the node, and look what it did. It finally shifted the POC down. So that support node that was down here actually became the new POC. So notice how both the nodes that I marked out throughout the day, both ended up being point of controls. Okay? So those nodes became very relevant throughout the entire day. It's called point of control, boss. It's the highest node on the volume profile. Okay, so where was I? So you tried to reclaim the POC here. But until you reclaim this volume gap, this is still very weak. Okay? Let's move on. Here's another update. And look at what happened. We tried to reclaim the POC, which we kind of did for a little bit. But it was still putting in lower highs. So you see lower high, and then you sold off. All right? So you started to sell off. The POC is still acting as resistance. And look at the value here. You're not actually putting in any support nodes. Okay? And this is our third target being hit. So our third target is hit. We have the fourth target here, and this would be the final target. So let's move on. Here's another update. You come back to retest the POC, and then it acts as resistance. It also hit our fourth target. So fourth target was hit, and now we're pulling back, putting in a lower high again. And then finally, this was the last update that I did. You failed off the POC. You can see right here, you're failing off the POC. But then look at that. Very strong recovery. We broke the POC and that original support node, and look at where it hit. That volume gap that I marked out way back here was finally hit. So these gaps will act as like magnets, right? It will suck price into them, and price will either reject it instantly or it will start filling it in. Okay? So if you bought the reclaim of the POC, you would have been targeting the volume gap. Now, buying the reclaim of the POC is a very risky trade because when you're in a B-shaped volume profile, you are bearish, right? So you're safer to sell the highs than you are to buy the lows. Max said, how are you trading this in real time? Are you not trading in look back? I call this out in real time in Discord. So every single one of these screenshots that I'm pulling from, I called these out as they happened in Discord. So you could have live traded them in Discord the entire day. And I do this pretty much every day. Yeah, I know it's in hindsight now, but I have to do that for the stream, right? But okay, so the volume gap was formed here, and then you finally had price react to that volume gap. Okay? So those are all the updates that I have on Qs. Let's go back to SPY, and then I'll give you guys some like live examples. All right, where do we leave off on SPY? I think it was the balanced profile. Let's see. Yeah, right here. Okay, so we had the balanced profile on SPY. We pulled up, and then we failed the POC. Okay, so let's see what happened after that. After that, we failed the POC very hard, and then just nuked straight down to our first trigger, which also is a target around 437.81. The next targets are 437 and then 436.90. Let's see what happens. Continues to sell off, does not find any support. You see the little tail it's forming? This is what's called a tail. So you have like the balanced day, and then these are like tails. Okay. So it's forming a tail, but it doesn't have any major support. So let's keep going. Here is the first target being hit. It's trying to form a little support. You can see like a little node building here, but it's not significant just yet. Okay, now here's the update that I made. Now it's starting to get significant. So it starts to form a little support node, but then it breaks through it. So you broke through the support node. Our second target has been hit. So 437.12 and then 436.90. Both those targets have been hit. Next target would be 436.18. Let's see how it acts. So if you were like bullish here, you would not want to buy this unless it recovered the node, the support node. So basically you're just looking for shorts the entire way. Okay, the next update, let me get rid of some of these old ones. The next update here, we can see it bounces right off that little support node. You see how it builds up? It builds up that support node, and now it's holding above it. I think this actually ended up being a fake out. Let's see. Yes, this was actually a fake out. So here's the next update. So you tried to bounce off that that node. It bounced pretty nicely, actually. You bounced all the way back to the initial breakdown around 437.80. But if you guys follow my fib technique, once this has been broken, this is going to act as very strong resistance, right? So we popped up, very strong resistance, and then we sold off. So you could have shorted that if you wanted to. That was also the value area low. So if you wanted to short the retest of the value area low, you can do that. And that is your first sign that this is getting very bearish. Once you lose the value area low, and then you come back to retest it, and then you reject it on the retest, that is extremely bearish. That means that you're trying to find value lower than your previous value area, okay? So you reject the value area low, which is also the fib, and then you sell off, and now you're creating a new tail here. So let's keep going. SPY actually does not make it to the next set of targets before reclaiming that node. And that node is actually becoming very significant. So go back to where we saw that node forming. Where was it? Here. So this node started building here, right? And now look at how much bigger it's gotten. This is almost becoming the POC. So the point of control, if this trades down here any longer, it's going to shift the POC lower. Okay? So keep an eye on that. But for right now, it is recovering that node, which is quite bullish. Let's keep looking. Okay, and here's my last update. So now after this, we're going to go over kind of how to do it step by step. So what did I just say? So this node, you see how this node is building? This node is building, and what did I just say? If it builds a little bit more, it's going to come down and pull the POC, right? And look at that. So it starts to build, and then it forms the POC on the lower section. So this shows you what's happening. This pink area is the value area. If it's gray, that means it's outside the value area. All right. So before, our value was up here. This was our value area. This was like 70% of our value. Now it's coming down, and now our value is towards the low side. So what does that tell you? If the day was if SPY was valuing like 439 before, and now it's valuing 437, that means our value is getting lower, meaning people are trading at a lower price. That's very bearish, right? Okay, so we have the POC shifted, and now we're actually reclaiming it. That was my last update. So now let's actually see what SPY is doing since then. So here's the POC. That's where we just looked at. It reclaimed it, and now we're coming back to retest the previous breakdown point. All right. So I'm going to delete all of this. We just covered basically the entire day. I'm going to delete all this, and I'm going to give you like a speed run of how to find these levels like throughout the day. Okay. Let's go ahead and delete this. Let's go ahead and hide this as well. Okay, so the first thing you do is you wait for 10:30. You got to wait the first hour. You can trade the first hour, but it's very hard to do with the volume profile technique because there is no profile. The profile has not been formed yet. Okay, so we wait for 10:30. We grab the first hour of the day. There is the value area high, the value area low, and then the POC. Okay, and I'm actually going to do it this way so we can play it in real time. Okay, so this is what it looked like at, actually let me play a few more candles. Okay, 10:35. Okay, so this is where the 10:30 candle closes. So this is what it looked like when we grabbed that initial balance. So it's slightly bearish, okay? And if you were looking for like a buying opportunity, it would either be a reclaim of the POC and the value area low, or a breakout of 439.50, and then you would be targeting basically the gap fill. Okay. So let's let it play a little bit longer and see how it happens. We're gonna let it go until 11:30. I'll do it hour by hour. So let's let it go until 11:30. I think that's 11:30. Oh, two more candles. Okay, so here's 11:30. Let's take a look at the profile. So now we have our value area low shifting lower. Okay, so this was our previous value area low. Now it's down here. Okay, so it's clearly getting more bearish. The value area high is also shifting down there. Okay, so the value area high is shifting downward. The value area low is shifting downward. That's becoming pretty bearish, all right? So, like I was saying earlier when we went over it, if it's a balanced profile, you're typically pretty safe to buy the lows and sell the highs. This is not really that exact scenario that you'd want to be buying the lows because you're finding a lot of strength below the value area low. Typically, if it's balanced, and let's say the value area low is like here, if you find a lot of momentum down here, that is most likely going to continue lower. On a real balanced day, it's not going to find big candles like this. They're not typically going to be very strong momentum to the downside or the upside. It's going to be usually pretty choppy. Like it will just kind of chop around and then it will return. Same thing up here. It will chop around, then it will return back. It doesn't usually find a lot of momentum. Okay. So this is pretty bearish. This is kind of your first sign that it's getting bearish. Let me get rid of this. And just watch the profile here as we go on. So we're going to go until 12:30. Let's let it play. You see how it starts to build? You see how it starts to build? Kind of like a support down here. So you could have, around this time, kind of taken this little node right here, and that would be like a little support. So it tries to give you a nice little trade here where it bounces off the node, and then maybe you could take it to the POC. But like I was saying, it's a little bit of a bearish day, especially with a big gap down. So you could have ignored all the like bullish trades that it gave you, and you could have only watched for the retest of resistance or like the bearish continuation trades. Those would have been a lot higher probability on a day like today. Let's let it play a little bit more. You see how that failed? So like if you would have tried to take that bounce, it would have killed you immediately, right? And it's just because today is so bearish. So let's keep letting it go. All right, so now we're at 12:30. So now let's take a look at our profile. What's going on here? So now the value area low has shifted again. So this was, where's my arrow? Right here. So this was our value area low. Now our value area low is way down here. And you don't have to do it this way. It's actually built in. You can turn on developing value area, and it will show you how it's developing. This is just a little too choppy, or a little too messy for my chart. I like just finding the levels by myself. But if you guys want the built-in indicator to do it for you, you can just turn that on. It actually makes it easier for me to go over if I leave it on. You guys can see that the value area is just shifting lower the entire time. But we're going to go ahead and turn it off for now. Okay, so like I was saying earlier, you could try to buy the lows and kind of sell the retest of the POC and whatnot. But today is shifting more so into a bearish imbalance than it is a balanced day. So trying to buy the lows is extremely risky. Now, what you would mainly be looking for is stuff kind of like this, where we have these like gaps. You'd be looking for like retest of gaps or retest of the value area low or retest of POC. Anything that would give you kind of like a bearish retest. That's kind of what you're looking for on a day like today. So let's let it play some more. It's 12:30. Let's go out to 1:30. So notice how it's building this node. This node is getting very, very strong. Max, would you say gaps or voids? Yeah, these are gaps. Like these little areas in between the nodes, these are gaps. Now, these are volume gaps. These are price gaps. So these are price gaps where price just kind of gaps on the open. These are volume gaps where it's like an inefficiency. Price did not test that level for a long period of time. I discussed that more in my how to trade volume profile video if you want to learn more about that. All right, let's keep going. So what I was saying earlier, notice how this node is forming. So if you start losing this node, it's very bearish because you found a lot of value here. So if you start to lose this, this is all going to become resistance, right? So the more we lose this, the more bearish today is. Okay, and there it goes. You see how it starts to push away from that level? You notice how, let me actually go back a little bit. Let's go back to like here. Watch how this happens. Pay close attention to the node here. You see how it starts to build, and then we start to push away, and every time that it tries to retest it, it pushes away again. Do you see that? See, look at that wick there. You see how it tries to come back above that node, and it begins to push away again? Those are the things you guys need to watch out for when you're live trading that are extremely bearish. And then there you go. You start to sell off a little bit. Okay, so now let's move this out again. We're going to go to 230. So right now, you want to be watching this node right here. And we'll pull that out a little bit. And then we have our new value area low, which is right around there. So like this is a very key area of resistance. All right. Okay, it's retesting it now as resistance. So let's pay attention to this. Okay, so now, okay, what do we just see? Let me go back a few candles. Pay attention to this node here. Watch this node. It's lagging a little bit. It's supposed to be shifting the POC, but it hasn't done it yet. It's lagging a little bit. It's supposed to shift the POC down. Let's see if it will do it if I let it go a little bit more. I think it's a trading view bug. There it is. Okay. The POC just shifted, and that is quite bearish. Even though it looks very bullish here, this is actually quite bearish because it's showing you that you're finding a lot more value towards the low of the day than you are towards the high of the day. Okay. And look at where price is retesting. You broke back above this node, and you broke back above the value area low, which was very good, slightly bullish. But now we're retesting this little volume gap in the middle. So this actually started out. This started out as a balanced profile. Then we shifted into a bearish imbalance. And then it kind of shifted into a capital B where we had two nodes. You see the double node? And like I tell you guys, the capital B is wherever the second node is, that's what kind of day it is. If the second node is down here, it's bearish. If the second node is up here, it's bullish. So today would be bearish, right? Let's let it play a little bit more. One more thing that I want to go over. With the capital Bs, they always create a little void in the middle. They create a gap in the middle. In this gap, depending on where your second node is, it will tend to draw price towards it. So like if this was the first node and this was the second node and price is doing something like this, that little gap in the middle will tend to draw price towards that gap. Because what's happening here is a capital B is almost a perfectly balanced profile. Almost. The only thing it has to do to become perfectly balanced is fill in the middle. So if the market wants to be efficient, they will start filling in the middle. So like imagine we have a profile like that, but then imagine price does something like this and it just hangs out in the middle for a long time. What does that do to the profile? It makes it perfectly balanced. Because it draws all that volume towards the middle. Does that make sense? So this node would start to fill in, and then it would look like this. You would have the highest volume in the middle, and then as you go down, you would have lower volume, and then as you go up, you would have lower volume. It would create a perfectly balanced profile, which the market wants to be balanced. If the market is 100% efficient, it wants to be balanced, right? So understand when you have capital B days like this, wherever the second node is what kind of day you are, but the void in the middle will always try to attract price into it. Okay? All right, let's move on a little bit. So what are we seeing right now? We're seeing, let's actually pull this out. Let's see, to 3:30. We're almost caught up to live time. So right now, that exact thing that I just discussed is trying to happen. You created the top node, you created the second node, and now it's trying to fill in the middle. It's trying to be attracted towards the middle. This little POC bounce right here is very bullish, by the way. So we have a bullish break of the node, a bullish break of the value area low, and then a bullish break of the POC. So if all three of those things happened back to back, I probably would not be looking to like short the POC or take like the closest short that it gives me. I would probably let it play out a little bit because it's trying to be very bullish. All right, let's let it play out a little bit. Let's see what happens here. Look at where it's being attracted. Do I have a screenshot of that? Let me see if I have a screenshot. I don't have a screenshot, but let's go back a little bit. You see that gap? Notice how small that gap is, like right here. And then let's let it play out. And watch how it fills in that gap. It's trying very hard to fill in that inefficiency. Notice that? That gap is no longer a gap. It's the POC now. You see how quickly it filled that in? I'm going to do it one more time. Because this is a very key point that you guys have to understand. This is a price inefficiency. If the market wants to be efficient, it has to fill in that gap. So here, I'm gonna let it play one more time. I'm gonna do it a little slower this time. Let me speed it up and then slow it down when it gets towards the gap. All right, watch the gap. It starts to fill in. It continues to fill in. Keep watching. It's still filling it in. And then it shifts the POC into the gap. So now what does today look like? Now today is almost perfectly balanced. So today is actually fantastic for this series. I actually got really lucky. I started this series at a perfect time because I was able to cover almost every single kind of profile type in one day. It started out balanced. It shifted to a bearish imbalance. The node on the top was kind of small, which then created a double B, or sorry, a capital B. And then we shifted our price back up and made it balanced again. So it went from balanced to bearish imbalance to balanced. And I think we're live now. Are we live? I believe we are. Let's turn this off. Yeah, so now we're live. Okay. So now that we're live, today is back to being balanced. So sadly, the market's about to close, so we only have 13 minutes left. If this was like Bitcoin and it was 24/7, and we saw a profile like this, you are once again safe to buy the lows and sell the highs. Because you have found resistance on the highs, you have found support on the lows, and you have filled in the price inefficiencies in the middle. So you are safe to buy the lows and sell the highs. So in both instances, you would be looking for how price is reacting to the value area low, the value area high, the different support and resistance nodes, et cetera, right? So, for example, if price were to come down here, and you guys can watch this on the post-market session, because ES will continue after hours. If price were to come down here and break the value area low, which is actually right there, you want to pay attention to the support nodes outside of your value area. So like the tail, right? So we have a little support node here, and then we have a big one here. And then basically that's our tail. So if you want to draw these out, you can just kind of draw a level there. And then you can draw like a little zone there for the node. So if you were looking to buy the lows, that's where you'd be looking to buy. You'd be looking to buy either this area here or this level here. So these are two kind of different strategies because this one is directly below the value area low. So if I was looking to buy this zone here, you wouldn't just go for the sell-off and then like limit in. You're not looking to limit in on a node like this. If it's a node directly below the value area low, you're looking for a retrace. So like a swing failure. So like if it came down and did something like this, that's your entry, not like limiting in. If you want to limit in, you want to look for something kind of like this, where it's farther away from the value area low, and it gives you enough room so that if it's sold off and it wanted to be balanced, it's not going to go much lower. So you could limit in to that level because you're very close to the low of the day, which is the tail. This is the best volume profile presentation I've seen. Hey, Max, I appreciate it, man. Jay said, now that I look at Bitcoin's actual range, it's mind-blowing how the price tries to bounce through days, then break down to the low, and then violent up to the high of the range. Yeah, exactly, man. Once you learn this style of trading, it's going to open your eyes to exactly why price is doing what it's doing. Okay, so that's how you would play the low. So if it came down to the low, that's how you'd play it. Either a retrace or a wick. Okay? This is how you would play the high. Almost the same thing. Let me get rid of the initial balance. Actually, I'll go over one thing before I get rid of it. Because this is the initial balance, and we're way below it, and we're coming back to retest, this is now very strong resistance. Okay? So if you were being very aggressive, and you wanted to short, like, the first chance you got, you could short this, like, initial balance retest. Now, the one downside to that is the initial balance is pretty far inside the value area. So if this goes to retest the value area high, let me color code these so it makes it easier. If this goes to retest the value area high, or like this support node right here, then you're going to be underwater a little bit. Like if you try to short this and it goes to there, you're going to be underwater. So that would be like the very aggressive way to short. If you're trying to follow the profile, the current profile, and not the initial balance, you would be looking for the value area high, just as the same that we looked for on the value area low. And then you would be looking for the resistance nodes. So there's a resistance node here, and then we don't really have anything above that. So the only other thing that you could kind of target above that is like the high of the day. Okay. So once again, because this node is so close to the value area high, you would not be looking for a limit. You would be looking for a retrace. So like if it came up like this, you're not going to instantly get in. You're going to wait for it to clearly fail that zone. And for this level, that level you could limit. Now, one thing I will say, trying to short the high a day and buy the low a day is very risky. And throughout my years of doing this style of trading, I try to avoid those trades. They can pay off huge, but they only pay off in double bottoms or double tops. If it starts to push through that level, you're going to get killed very quickly. So I try to avoid those trades. But if you guys are like riskier traders, you like the high risk, those can be very good entries. So like if we were pretending like this was our current day and we were looking for our support nodes, this node right here is far enough away from the value area low that if you wanted to put limits in that node, you could. The only time I wouldn't use limits in a node is if it's really close to the value lines. So like this node here, it's too close to the value area high, so I wouldn't put limits there. You want to see how price reacts to it. It doesn't give you that comfort zone. There's not enough space to like wait and see how price plays out. Okay, so Bitcoin is a little different, like I told you guys yesterday, because Bitcoin's 24/7. You've got a lot more time throughout the day. So we're going to use a 15-minute time frame for Bitcoin instead of a 5-minute. All right. So let's do this as quickly as we can. So we're going to start off on the open of the day, and we're going to go for 1 hour. Let's hide this real quick. This is another thing with Bitcoin. Because you're 24/7. I lost my profile. Where's my profile? Here it is. Because you're 24/7, the initial balance is going to be extremely small compared to the rest of the day. But it still works the same exact way. So there is your value area high. There is your value area low. And here is your POC. And let me mark out where the day starts so we don't get lost. The day starts right there. And then let's mark out where 10:30 is. Or this wouldn't be 10:30. This would be 1 hour through. Right there. Okay. So that is our value area high, value area low, POC. So now we get to watch kind of how price reacts to these levels. Let's replay this. Let's start here. And let's go ahead and let this play. Let's turn on our volume profile. And we're going to let this thing play out for a little bit. And you can do this on a 5-minute or a 15-minute. Depends on kind of what you're trying to trade. If you're trying to be like a big scalper, really short time frame, you can do a 5-minute. Because it's 24/7, you can easily use the 15-minute. Let's let it play out a little bit here. Okay, so we had our first reaction to the initial balance. So this was the initial balance, right? This little range here. This was our first reaction. Look at what price did. You came back to retest it, and then you sold off immediately. So that was pretty bearish. And then now we're pulling back to retest it again, and that's also giving us kind of a little bearish retest. So far today, the profile is not really giving you a whole lot. It's just basically a normal balanced profile. You just have the normal balance, POC towards the middle. It's a little bit shifted towards the high, so slightly bullish. And like I said before, with these balanced profiles, you are safe to buy the lows and safe to sell the highs typically. Okay. So with that in mind, when it came down to put in this little tail, if you were being very aggressive, you could have bought the lows and looked for a retest. Okay. Let's let it play out. Okay, so we got our first shift. So now you saw that POC shifted lower. So the POC was up here. Now it's down here, which is now going to give us a new value area. So now our value area high is shifting down. So we have the value area high was here. Now it's shifting to here. The value area low was here. And now it's shifting to there. So we are shifting our value bearishly. So now you can still buy the lows because you are pretty much balanced. But because your POC shifted towards the low, it's going to start to lean bearish a little bit. So buying the lows is a little risky. Let's let it play out some more. Okay, so this is our first bullish sign, starting to reclaim the POC. And now we are retesting our initial balance value area low. If it can reclaim this balance low, then we're starting to get very, very bullish. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so it failed it again. That's nasty, right? So we had the failure, what was it, there, and now there. So this, as of right now, is starting to look very bearish. Okay. 30-minute initial balance. I use an hour. So some people use 30 minutes. I like to use an hour. It's just a personal preference. I've found better reactions with a 1 hour balance than a 30-minute. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so we had the bearish retest, which, like I was saying earlier, if you're extremely aggressive, you could sell that retest of the initial balance, but it's pretty far away from your value area high. So if it does go for that value area high push, you're going to be underwater. So if you're asking yourself, should I sell this level here? You have to ask yourself, am I okay with being underwater this much? Right? If you're okay with being underwater, if it goes for that value area high test, then you can sell that retest. It's just a lot more aggressive. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so this is getting pretty bearish. You have the failure of the initial bounce low, and then you have the break of the POC, and then we just broke the value area low and pushed it lower. Let's keep going. Once again, we shifted the POC lower again, so that is quite bearish. Now, one thing that is nice, though, is we started to bounce off the POC as soon as we shifted it lower. So that is acting as support. So now, as long as that holds as support, this could retrace the entire day. Let's keep going. Shifted the POC again, and then we started to lose it, so that's not good. This is just very balanced, honestly. Very balanced. You're hovering towards the POC. You try to go higher, sells off. Try to go lower, it buys up. So still very balanced. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Okay, so once again, we're testing the initial balance and selling off. Until it reclaims this the initial balance low, it is still slightly bearish. Look at that. It does not like that level. Failed again. Let's see if this can hold. Okay, so actually, let's mark out some levels. So we have that value area high there. We have a little bit of a node right here, which was our POC before we shifted. And then we don't really have anything above that. So let's watch this. Okay, there's that node. So this is the previous POC, the initial balance POC, being retested. If I was trading this, I also would probably note that this is a very clean trend. So like you could draw out this trend line too. It's creating a very clean trend here. But we're just going to do volume profile trading for now. Look at that retest. So what did I say earlier? I said if you wanted to take that retest of the initial balance low, you had to be okay with being underwater a little bit, because if it wanted to pop up and retest the value area high, it would put you underwater. So if you took that short around that level, you now would be it would be paying off, but you would have been underwater a little bit. So if you would have been a little bit more patient, you could have gotten a nice little fill there on that retest of the POC. So right now, that's pretty bearish. We have failed the POC. We have failed the initial balance low. All right, let's keep going. Still bearish. It's just trying to get bought up, but there's just not a whole lot of buyers. But it's still very balanced as well. It's definitely not a bearish imbalanced day. The price action is just acting bearishly according to all of our levels. Let's keep going. Okay, so this is like the first sign that it starts to get bullish here. You're bouncing off the POC repeatedly, and you're not able to find any value below that POC. So that's pretty good. So that would be kind of like the line in the sand for the rest of the day to determine if you are bearish or not. So this would have to fail for you to target the value area low and then like the low of the day. So now we're starting to get bullish. If it can hold on to this node here and break above the initial balance high, then the day would technically be bullish because we are above our balance. Okay. Let's keep going. And look at that reaction. So this is why the day is not bullish yet, because you're not able to hold on to the node, and you're not able to break above the initial balance high. So until that happens, you are technically not bullish. Sorry, let me catch up with some questions. Let's see. Is this a picture of buyers running out to sellers for a move higher? Not really. This would just be kind of like there was a clear battle where the buyers and sellers were just competing the entire day. But then once it got towards the, what is this, like the middle of the day, I guess, you have a strong reaction to POC. So the buyers are stronger. They have like more ammo, I guess you would say. The buyers are continuing to buy the dips. The sellers they're selling the highs, but they're not selling this low, right? If the sellers were very strong, they would want to sell this lower, so it would go lower, right? They're only selling when it goes really high. Did you notice that? So like when it gets pushed up really high, that's when they're selling it off. They're not pushing it down when it's around the POC level. If that makes sense. The sellers are finding value up here. They're not finding value down here. Is this the session HD? This is just the regular session one. All right, let's keep going. Notice how it's kind of like stuck between the initial balance. You see how even during a 24-hour market, this first hour of the day is causing so many different reactions to price. With that said, it's actually getting bullish here now as well. So you're back above the node, and you're holding above the balance high. So if you can get some candle closes up here and actually hold this level, then we're getting very bullish. But if it loses level again, it's just continuing to be balanced. Yeah, so it lost it again. So it's just a very, very balanced day. Okay, now we're starting to get interesting. So now you failed the initial balance high, but then you put in a higher low kind of on that node. So once you reclaim that node, this is starting to get bullish. This is starting to get bullish. So now, if it retests these levels, if you were very aggressive, you could buy these levels as support looking for a move higher. But it hasn't really shown itself just yet to being full bullish. If it holds this level though on a retest, then it's extremely bullish. Okay, let's move on. Let's see if we get the retest. Okay, so you didn't get the retest. So if you were trying to buy the retest, you would have actually missed out on this trade. So sadly, that would have been a missed trade. How else could you have really played that? If you were really aggressive, you could have bought the break of the initial balance high. But that's not something that I would typically do. It really depends on how aggressive you are. But there's a couple signs here that I wanted to break out. POC was reclaimed. Higher low, finally broke the initial balance high. So you could have taken that as a breakout trade. I don't really like being a breakout trader. So I probably would have waited for the pullback. So I would have missed that trade. Well, let's keep going. Actually, hold on. Let me pause here for a second. Let's actually go back. Let's go back to like here. Watch the tail form. So watch the tail form and watch how the nodes build up. This is something that you need to get really good at when you are trading volume profile. So watch the breakout. Okay, you see the nodes forming? So once this node starts to form, we can grab this as like a little support area. So now we can say if it stays above this level, it's very bullish. If it breaks below this level, it's probably going to retest these other nodes. So like we have a node here, and then we have, we've got a couple of gaps. So like if we wanted to mark out every single level, we could. Like we have a gap there, and then we have a gap kind of in between here. Let's keep going. Okay, you see that? So that was a very bullish retest of that gap. So for right now, this is very bullish. Until it loses that node, this is very bullish. And look at that. Very, very clean breakout higher. So if you guys were doing what I was talking about before, putting your limits on those gaps, you could have gotten a beautiful fill there. It would have been very aggressive, but you could have gotten a very, very strong fill there. Okay, so we're starting to form a new node. So like we have a nice little node forming here. So now, once again, if it stays above that, it's very bullish. If it breaks below it, then it's starting to get weaker. Let's also mark out that little gap there. All right, so it's starting to get weak. You see that? You see how it's starting to lose that node? Okay, so now it reclaimed it. Let's see if it can hold on to it. Okay, so that was really clean. This is why using a 5-minute chart is very strong when you're doing volume profile trading, because you get to see exactly how it's reacting to these levels. Let's go back a little bit. Did you guys catch that? You try to fail it. Let me zoom in a little bit. Actually, no, I want you guys to see the node, so let me stay like this. You see how it tries to fail it? Instantly gets bought up. Instantly gets bought back into the node. Break above the node. Retest of the node. Instantly bought up again. And then rocket. Did you guys catch that? That's very, very, very bullish. Exceptionally bullish. And then, again, if you guys are just price action traders, this is making a very strong trend. So, like, you could draw a trend line there, whatever. But we're just going to talk about volume profile for now. All right, let's keep going. That was really, really bad. Let's actually go back and see how that happened. Let's see how that happened. Okay, so we have a buy up. Tries to start forming a node, but it doesn't really form it. Sells off. Okay, so you see this node that came in? It formed a new node. So now we're bearish below this node, bullish above this node. If we lose this, then we're very bearish. Let's keep going. Okay, so now we're very bearish. So you see how we lost this node, so now we've lost 2 nodes, and we've lost the gap. So if you were like shorting this, you could have shorted like somewhere there. You could have shorted there, but that happened way too fast. So you probably would not have gotten that short. But you could have shorted the loss of that node. You could have also shorted the loss of the volume gap, but that's pretty far away. So like if you shorted this, your stop loss would have to be up here. That's not a good trade. So unless you were very quick and you got this trade or this trade, I probably would not trade this. Okay, so before I keep going, if you didn't want to short that and you only wanted a long, like you're extremely bullish, you only want a long, now we're asking ourselves, where do I look for long entries? So where I look for long entries are the previous nodes, any gaps, so like that there. We have the node there as well. We have the gap there as well. So this is all support here. So you want to pay close attention to how price is reacting to these levels. The most important level, though, is this one here. The value area high. And I'll make that a different color so we can keep an eye on it. Let's make that black. So that value area high, that's like the most important level, because if we come all the way back down, but then we bounce off that high, that means that we want to search for higher value. So like this is our current value down here. We don't really have any value up here. We have some value building. It's like building value, but it hasn't shifted. If it comes all the way back down to the value area, but then it doesn't want to get back inside of it, that's telling you that the buyers are now finding value higher. They're finding value on a higher level. It's like, imagine if you guys are at like a garage sale, and it's like you against another guy, and you want to buy something that's really cool. That guy is bidding like 37,300, and you're like, I don't know, that thing's pretty cool. I'd rather bid 37.6. So you are now finding higher value in that item than was previously found. Okay. All right, so if you're shorting, that was a short entry, that was a short entry, this was a short entry, but it's too late. If you're longing, this is your best possible place to look for a long, and you have little long entries around there. All right, so let's let it play out. So there you go. So look at what we bounced off of. We have that volume gap at 37.8 that acted as a beautiful support. Now, this wasn't the strongest entry, like this would have been way better. But if you were looking for a nice little scalp, that's a pretty big move. That's a 1.4% move there. That's huge. If you guys are scalping, that is massive, 1.8%. So that trade is basically already, that's done. You're in and out right away. What did I just do? There we go. So you could have long the gap there, and then you would have targeted either the gap here or the node. You could also target this node, but that's a stretch. That's you being greedy. If you were just going for a scalp, that is more than enough. But you could target the next node. All right, let's keep going. So we're still just kind of bouncing in between these levels. Nothing really crazy happening here. One thing I could have noted is if you wanted to short, there was a re-entry. It's very basic stuff, guys. Like, this is resistance. You fail the resistance. It comes back to retest the resistance. If you're looking to short, that's a resistance retest. It's very, very simple. Let's keep going. Okay, so one thing I want to note is look at this node building. Do you remember how small that node was when we first noted it? When I first showed you guys that node? It's damn near the POC now. That's why you want to mark out these nodes when they start to build, because they can form into massive nodes like how these did. Jay, that's a very good point. Thank you. I want to cover that. I know my chart's getting really messy. This is what I said earlier. This is the downside to volume profile trading. Your chart will be very messy. What Jay said is this is a capital B forming. That's spot on. So now we're forming a capital B. So we were extremely balanced, right? We started out balanced. We tried to push lower to the downside, but then it got bought up. And then we saw a breakout. So what did it do? It created a higher node, and now the lower node is creating the capital B. What did I tell you guys earlier? The capital B's, they leave a void in the middle, a gap. There's a big gap here that likes to attract price into it because it wants to be balanced. Okay? So let's keep going. And I'm not going to do the whole 24 hours because I don't know how much farther do we have. Oh no, we're almost done. Okay, we'll finish this out. We're almost done. But okay, so we're coming back to retest that value area low now. Or excuse me, the value area high. But did you notice something? That's not the value area high anymore. The value area high has shifted. This is why you want to mark these levels out, because that is still a very key level. It's just not the value area high anymore. So let me go back a few candles. Let's see where it actually shifts. Oh, it actually shifted way earlier. I just didn't notice it. Yeah, it shifted a lot earlier. Okay, so we're going to let this play out. Let this keep going. Nothing crazy happening right now. It's just all of our levels that we've already drawn out. You're getting small reactions on each one of these levels. Nothing too important. Okay, so this is the first major retest of our initial value area high. Okay, so if we wanted to, we could long this here. Now, depending on how price pulled back to retest this level, that would kind of determine if you want to long here or not. If it like did one of these where it's like, okay, bull flag, and then just nuke down, you probably don't want to long that, okay? There's a lot of sell pressure, probably not a good long. If it does something like this, where it kind of gives you like a falling wedge into the level, that's pretty good. That's not too bad. You could definitely long that. Then you have to ask yourself, where is my stop loss going to be? Okay. So if we long this level, we got to look at all of our big support levels below us. So we have the initial value area high. We have the initial POC. We have, what was that red line? I don't remember what that was. I think that was a value area low. Let's get rid of that for now. And then we have the initial balance low. So I would, depending on how much I was going for here, like if I was going for a full retrace, I would probably put my stop loss below that initial balance low or the POC. If I was going for just a small scalp, like maybe just at this level there, then I'd probably put my stop loss like down there. So it all depends on kind of how much you're going to go for. So let's see how either one of those trades would have played out. Okay, so if you went for the scalp, you would have got that easily. If you're going for the full retrace, let's see if you would have got that. So far, you're in profit, but you have not gotten your target. Okay, we're getting pretty close. You would either target this node or that node, depending on how greedy you are. That would have scared you a little bit. That would have scared you a little bit, because that would have damn near taken away all your profit. So you would have had to made a decision there to if you would have wanted to close that level, or sorry, close that trade, or hold on to it. You are currently in profit, so even though it pulled back, you still would not be losing. But that would have been a little scary in real time. Let's let it keep going. Do you see what's happening here? These gaps that we marked out earlier are no longer gaps. This gap has completely filled in, and this gap has completely filled in. And then what also did we just mention? Jay mentioned it in stream. He said it was a capital B forming, right? This is not a capital B anymore. This is almost a balanced profile. The only point of this profile that is not proper is this gap right there. So if this wanted to be very efficient, it would have to fill in that gap. Everything else is accurate. Oh, I think we're live. Okay, we're live. Let me get rid of that. All right. So we just got all the way. We just went over the entire almost 24 hours of Bitcoin today. And that's how you guys could have traded it. Does that make sense, guys? Do you guys have any questions? And I know a lot of you guys, if you guys are new to my channel, you're thinking like this guy is just complete hindsight trading. I do this every day live in Discord, guys. I'm only going over it in hindsight so I can teach you how to read the profile. I know it looks like that when I'm teaching that we're just looking at hindsight levels. But I assure you, if you use the stuff that I am teaching you throughout this week live, you will see it forming live. You will not have to wait for hindsight to see these levels. It's just practice, man. It's just practice. What platform are you using? This is TradingView. Do I charge for Discord? We have multiple tiers for Discord. We have a $30 tier, which is where I post my live analysis throughout the day. I post my daily watch list there as well. I post my weekly watch list there. We also have Cheddar Flow scanners that come in as well. We have higher tiers that are $1.99 a month or $4.99 for every 3 months. Those come with indicators, our live trading bot. They come with our live trading floor where we're in Discord chatting throughout the entire day, 9:30 to close. But yeah, if you guys are just interested in the analysis, we do have a lower tier, which is $30 a month, about $1 a day. If you guys are interested in the Discord, it's oasistrading.io/Discord. You see how messy my chart is, guys? Like that's the downside. I do highly recommend, if you guys are doing this style of trading, you keep one of your charts only designated to volume profile trading, and then you put your other indicators on your other charts. What's your rule on minimum RR? I don't really have a set rule. The only set rule that I have is I want to be able to get 1.5 or higher. If I can't get 1.5 to 1, I don't think the trade is worth it. But besides that, I don't really have any set in stone rules. Like if I'm risking 1%, if the trade can't get at least 1.5%, it's not worth it for me. The hardest part about this style of trading is, as you guys can see, like there's so many levels that you can find. It's all about execution. Like you have to make the right decisions with those levels. That's going to be the hardest part. And that's going to take time. You guys are going to have to practice to have the proper execution. Like, let me use this as an example. So, this was forming this node, right? And like all the way up, it was forming nodes, retesting it, going higher. Forming nodes, retesting it, going higher. So, when this node started to form, when it came back to retest it, you very easily could have longed there. You very easily could have longed there, and you would have lost that trade. So using the levels properly is going to be the hardest part. Finding the levels you guys are not going to struggle with. I guarantee within like a week or so, you guys are going to be able to find all the levels that I found very easily. It's all about the execution. If you guys are watching this live or you're watching the VOD, please hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube if you guys are new to my content. All of these videos will be going into my How to Trade playlist. So once again, if you guys are watching this on a VOD, make sure you guys have already seen my How to Trade volume profile video. It is in the playlist. It is my most watched video on my channel. It is also one of the most watched volume profile videos on YouTube. So I really appreciate you guys supporting me. You guys are insane. I don't know why you guys love this volume profile stuff so much. I mean, it is fantastic. It is one of my favorite techniques, but you guys really seem to like it. So I appreciate you guys supporting me, man. It's awesome. We're going to call it a video. I will see you guys tomorrow for part 3. Make sure you guys stop by around 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to get started with part 3, and this will go until Friday. So we're going to have 5 parts. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys have a good night.